Hey everybody, it's Solar. It's June 8th, 2018. This is Warcraft Weekly. That is Bob, and today's episode is brought to you by Lethal Leprechaun, aka Loader. Real quick, the other day I put up a donation goal, and he just killed it, and that was able to get me a brand new green screen for my birthday. Yay! It's right there. There you go. You get your quick glance, and pop, it goes away again. It's a fantastic screen. It's semi-portable, and by the way, this is not a sponsored video. It's just a really good screen. So for folks who are interested in getting into streaming, or if they wanted to get a good green screen, I'm gonna provide a link below where you can get your own. Before I get started though, as a really dumb reminder, for those of you who have subscribed to the channel for a long time, and you might not have been seeing anything on your feed, please hit that bell button over there. It'll make sure that whenever I produce something cool, that you'll get a notification. I know that for some of you, you consciously leave that stuff off, and that is totally okay. But I want to make sure that those who want to keep track of what I'm doing can actually see when I'm doing stuff. So if you can help me out there, and for other channels that you enjoy following, please do it. Okay, so with all that stuff out of the way, let's get right to it. World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. It's going to launch August 14, 2018, worldwide. Oh my god. For the first time in World of Warcraft history, the release of an expansion is going to happen all over the place at pretty much the same time. I have a map right up there showing you exactly what time the expansion is actually going to come out in your region, and at the center of the world, which is apparently Europe, at 12 a.m. on the 14th, that's when the expansion is going to launch for most of you folks over there. What does that mean for the Americas? In fact, that's going to mean that we're going to be starting the expansion almost 8 hours earlier, depending on where you live. Well, then there's Hawaii too. So here where I'm at, the expansion is going to come out on the 13th at 3 o'clock p.m. That's like rush hour. So it's kind of weird. I mean, I'm not going to complain. My commute isn't very far. But for everyone who had already put in time off requests, just a quick reminder, you probably want to change it. Well, before the expansion comes out though, you probably want to make sure that your computer is up to date. Blizzard is going to drop 32-bit support for the World of Warcraft client around early July or so. This gives us a pretty good time frame as to when the Battle for Azeroth pre-patch is going to release. So beware, people with potato-like computers. On the day of the pre-patch, you might not be able to run the World of Warcraft at all. For the rest of us that don't have to worry, July, pre-patch. Kind of fits with the timeline. The Electronic Entertainment Expo, aka E3, is going down next week, and Blizzard's going to show up. Members of the Blizzard team, including Christy Golden, are going to be part of a storytelling panel talking about the World of Warcraft. Now, it is not unusual for Blizzard to show up at big events like these, such as E3 and Gamescom and PAX and some other places, but it's a little bit weird for them to show up just for storytelling, just apparently to push a book, which is, by the way, coming out on the 12th. As much as the more sadistic side of me wants to see this turn into a big roast of from fans on how they feel about WoW lore, I totally doubt it's going to be like that, but I just find it a little bit weird for them to show up at something like this. At some point, the Mage Tower is going to be available all the time right up before the Battle for Azeroth expansion launches. Good. Don't take my word for it, folks, but it feels like, based on the wording of their blue post, that they want to have this thing available before the pre-patch. So hopefully, you folks at home and on the toilets will be able to relax just a little bit. That didn't sound very good.
No, it didn't.
Anyway, it gives you a chance to throw your body at that challenge a little bit more, so this is pretty good news. Uniqlo and Blizzard are teaming up to make some shirts, and surprisingly, they're not all that bad, and more importantly, they're not all that expensive either. The shirts are right up there, and I find it kind of funny. So there are two shirts that are white, and they look like that. There's one shirt that is black, and it's that one, and then there is a gray one, and I'll leave the interpretation to you. Continuing Blizzard's audacity to ask for feedback, they're now asking for Mythic rating feedback. Yeah, I guess I have nothing to say about it, really. Most of the feedback that was sent in that particular forum thread, though, pretty much echoes the sentiment that we've been hearing across other threads and conversations. Topics included stuff like loosening up the roster restrictions, aka, having a flexible mythic or a 10-man mythic. They talk smack about Titan forging, Tomb Sargeras, and all the soaking mechanics. And of course, there is a big concern about the forced personal loot system, which isn't going to affect just them, but raiders of all shapes and sizes and skills. The third and apparently final pre-Battle for Azeroth comic was released, entitled three sisters. This was obviously about the three Windrunner sisters finally reuniting and having a cordial conversation of sorts. This was very, very hotly anticipated. There are tons of speculations about when this particular meeting was going to happen, how it was going to play out, and who would walk away with a head still on their shoulders. Or maybe they would walk away undead, something like that. Many conversations all throughout the internet, including the video that I posted, which is linked somewhere around here. I found them to be quite interesting, going into debates on whether or not the Void actually fears the darkness. Is Sylvanas really that bad that this fallen Naru is like afraid of her? Mufi says, I'm pretty sure that there's more to the Undeath and Void relationship. We had tickles of it during Wrath of the Lich King. If I recall correctly, the Void cannot control the Scourge or Undeath. Maybe set up for Wrath of the Lich King 2 Bolvar Boogaloo? My really quick thought on that is that between the Void and the Undeath, even if the Void were to fear the Undeath because they cannot control it, is that really a big deal? Because it doesn't feel like at the moment it doesn't seem to be there where the Undeath can infect the Void or it is like the Void's kryptonite. As far as I'm concerned, the Void is, legitimately pissed off that they can't control the idea of Undeath, or that Undeath lets them escape the Void whispers or something like that. But what's stopping them from bludgeoning them with a hammer instead? It's as if what the Void fears most is a fair fight, which is something they could still win, but they just don't like going through it, like they're a bunch of little wussies or something. I'm sure the new Lich King would be, for something like that.
Come, agents of the Void, taste the justice of the grave.
That'd be kind of cool, I guess. And apparently people like what my version of Void Whispers sounds like.
This is nothing. You should have destroyed her.
Now it's too late.
You have sacrificed greatness for false feelings. They will leave you.
You will watch as she claims them.
Unfortunately, and I admit I find this slightly distasteful, there were other conversations that took place too. Terrible, terrible drawing. The art is really bad. Even worse, on the WoW subreddit, the art style of this particular comic was just broken and taken apart and made into all sorts of meme-tastic things. I'm not going to defend the artists, but I feel a little bit bad because unlike many of the other comics that we've seen, well, I don't know if you heard me right, but I said artists. This comic was illustrated not by one, but two people. Antonio Bufuco is the sketch artist for this comic. Meanwhile, Sebastian Chang did all the coloring for this comic. And in my opinion, and this is art, so everyone's got a different opinion, I think that individually, they're great. The kind of style direction that they go in is very good for what it is. Putting them together, though, might not have worked out so well. I think it would have been fascinating to see the artist draw this comic the way that he intended to without having any color in it, and for him to just rely on his own sketching ability to fill in the gaps. But that's just my 2 cents about it. If you didn't like the look and art style of it, I'm not gonna fight you on it. Finally, yesterday, I had a lovely chat with Mr. GM. We talked, obviously, the World of Warcraft, some of our thoughts and feelings behind that, a little bit of the lore stuff, mostly game systems. We talked about BlizzCon and chicken and waffles and etc, etc. Redma says, it's good for you to hang out with an honorable alliance member like Mr. GM. We know your favorite color is really blue. This guy said, Mr. GM is kind of a prick. I think that's a little bit mean. I'm not going to say who that was because they happened to delete that comment right as of this very recording. So, yeah. I noticed that you gave it a thumbs up. Alright, so that covered most of the news. Let's move on to this week's beta build. And by the way, did you make it? Are you in the beta? Celebrate it, or, get really pissed off in a comment below. One of the fun parts about this particular beta build is that character transfers were now made available. Now we're finally able to see just what happens to our characters from Legion as they move into the battle for Azeroth. A lot of the information may be old at this point, but we do see that our artifacts are in fact disabled. We can still wear them, but they're about ready to go. Even the Underlight Angler, the fishing artifact, was not immune to Sargeras' sword's sucking up of whatever the hell. Supposedly this is a bug, and the traits for the Underlight Angler are still going to work, which makes this fishing rod the most powerful weapon on Azeroth. Probably not. By the way, feel free to ask little questions about the beta. I'd be happy to answer like little small things like, oh, so what's our gear going to be like? I guess, for example, heroic Antaurus gear is going to be dropped down to an item level of 225, which, feels really bad. But when you first start the expansion, you're going to be going through a certain kind of quest line. It's a pretty short one, but by the time you hit the end of this, you get your fancy schmancy little Azeroth neck thing, and you choose one piece of gear as a reward, either something on your head, your chest, or your boob slots. That particular piece has an item level of 275, greater than your artifact weapon. By the time you hit level 116, you are more than likely going to have replaced most, if not all, of your gear, with the exception of like cool stat things or trinket procs that you really like. Legendaries are going to be disabled at level 116, and well, I'm going to put together a guide on, just kind of the leveling path and guide and best tips and tricks on how to get through Kulturas or Zandalar. Battle for Azeroth Communities was introduced in this particular build, and I gave my thoughts on it, and to be honest, I'm not thinking very too highly of it, at least not this iteration. Super J-Man says, I'm with you, as I honestly don't see how this is going to bring more people or keep people together. Even if someone were a casual player and they just wanted to run like a casual heroic dungeon or doing the world quest for the day, I just don't see how this is going to bring those like-minded players together. Here's hoping that they add a search or some other form of delineation. By the way, that's my big gripe right now, that there's no search or browse function for communities at all. The Omega Supreme says, the way that I keep describing it to people is by comparing it to Discord, but not as good. Tyrael says they should just copy the community system from Diablo 3, which is pretty alright, and leave it at that. I'd personally be happy with that, even though I myself thought it also sucked. And I do plan on making my own community. I have no idea if it's going to be called Soul and Bob's House of Pantsless Debauchery and Pie, but it's going to be something. We now have a glimpse of just how to activate warfronts, and thankfully it's not so bad. In fact, this is probably a decent way for people to make some good money, at least at the beginning of the expansion. This is a pretty early look, by the way, and I'm pretty sure that some of the methods, and especially the values, are very likely to change. But basically what you do, at least on the Horde side, because that's where it's enabled at the moment, you go down to the docks, you see a bunch of NPCs with different daily quests where they ask for profession materials. You can give them stuff once a day per character, and you get a pretty significant amount of rep from it. One quest that is repeatable are war resources, but at least at the beginning of the expansion, I don't recommend using this particular thing. Just use it as a dump when you have a really big excess, like you inevitably will over time. Turning in these dailies at the moment is a really strong source of both Azeroth power as well as rep, so I'm kind of counting on that being nerfed, so when I finally do my whole leveling and progression guide, I'll try to give you as accurate of a value as I can find. Alright, let's get to some visuals real quick, shall we? Seriously, what is it with the awesome looking crabs? I mean, last week I had what? Like a drunk pirate one, and now we have this Horde and Alliance one. These are honor-based rewards, by the way. This horse right here, also an honor-based reward. Ooh, this is a horse. This horse is amazing. Give it a lick.
Oh, it tastes just like raisins.
The Kulturas Druid flight form is not the flying log that I hope it was going to be. Instead, it's going to be, what, a branch with feathers? The previous 400 mount achievement was, well, it was kind of ridiculed by some members of the community, and then it was replaced with this thing, a green firebird. Great. Apparently, after the starting events for the Battle for Azeroth, the Night Elves literally couldn't even leave with the clothes on their back. Many of these NPCs are being depicted throughout Azeroth, including the Battle for Lordaeron scenario. They look okay. They look alright. That one's cool. That one's typical. That one's alright. I know that this doesn't look right, that the shoulders need to be resized and adjusted a little bit, but this almost looks like, a wannabe Maiev just without the cloak to go along with the rest of, the top. Meanwhile, this guy, I gotta say, is, this is impressive. I like this. Think of how footmen used to look. They look like this or whatever, and now I'm a footman. I represent Stormwind for the Alliance, etc., etc., etc. Meanwhile, we're still waiting to see whether or not we're going to get upright undead. Or if anything, I think it would just be awesome if the undead didn't just have their spines exposed like that, as if it's their weak point. The last thing I'm going to talk about is about lore, and it is about spoilers, so beware. This is about the Mag'har orc recruitment scenario, which has been a big source of possible foreshadow and the future of the Warcraft franchise as a whole, as in what are we going to be confronting next? I find this both fascinating and kind of unnerving because Blizzard is trying to fast track their way into a next grand villain that is not the Burning Legion. I'm really hoping that this is more of a slow burn, although I mean, after Legion, we thought that we were just going to be invaded by the Legion, we were going to push them back, but instead we absolutely defeat them. But what seems to be happening here is that Blizzard is looking, between the lines, into the folds of lore and pulling new stuff out, pulling these new threads that we didn't see before that otherwise would never be there if not for Blizzard to start weaving their way into things. I'm going to read some of these quotes, and I'm not sure if they're just from some random Mag'har, or if it's from Gera, or Thrala, as I like to call her, but here we go.
As a child, Draenei scholars taught me to read and write. I liked them, respected them. Then the Naru came, and fanaticism took hold. The Draenei were reborn. No, they have a different word for it, reforged in their precious light. Their belief blinds them, binds them to masters who seek to control the universe as surely as the Legion did. Draenei, Eredar, so willing to bend the knee, so prone to corruption.
It's lines like that that are meant to plant the seeds of doubt into the reader. Who are the Draenei, the Eredar? They had a long history of being pretty much the most advanced civilization in the Great Dark, at least kind of up until Sargeras came by. And this quote's design is to build connections with the Draenei's pride and I guess hubris that they feel like they are the greatest race ever. I would say that the Draenei that follow Velen are of a more, they have a more moderate stance. The Eredar of 25,000 years ago decided to sign up with the Sargeras for the purpose of power and glory or something. The Draenei of AU Draenor, they were also maybe offered something, as in, to become Lightforged, and now here we are. This also tells me that the Naru themselves aren't exactly united, because why didn't the same thing happen in the Burning Crusade expansion? Of course, we could say that Blizzard just didn't decide to go that route, but we can't really let ourselves break the fourth wall and get into what Blizzard's reasoning is. At least I personally, I find it more fun to stick within the lore and try to reason my way through it. And I think that short of retcons, that's what Blizzard kind of tries to do too. But going back to the Mag'har, Blizzard wrote a pretty effective quote that it really just sums up what their motivations are.
The Alliance embraces the Draenei and their light-forged kin. That alone is a reason to crush their cities to dust.
Remember, this is coming from a race who's indigenous to the planet, who's had their world effectively, at least as far as we know, destroyed by these alien creatures, the Draenei, who would become infected with the Naru, and all these shenanigans took place. It's the trauma, and I guess also, the hey, I owe you one for way back in Draenor, that supersedes the ideas of honor. Earlier, there were arguments that the Mag'har should join the Alliance because the Mag'har should be about honor and not being corrupted, and the Alliance, that's what they're about, so they should join them. I guess it just goes to show you can't get over bad blood. And that's all I gotta say today. So I do hope that everyone has had a very good week today. An otherwise okay week was made really, really awesome because some of the fun that I had with Mr. GM and the generous donation from Loader. I'm not quite sure how things are gonna go next week content-wise. I mean, there's my birthday, so I may or may not be doing anything on Tuesday, but also the Before the Storm book is coming out and I'm going to be reading the shit out of it. I thought about doing possibly a live reading of the entire book if my throat can manage it, but that's not going to be until I definitely finish the book myself and possibly give my thoughts and analysis and reactions to it. Anyway, with the expansion coming up pretty soon, and before you know it, it's going to be right at our doorstep. You can expect some basic guides, maybe a wrap-up of Legion, and well, more content. Since I try to do so many different things, I would love to hear thoughts from you folks at home and on the toilets. What would you like to see more of or less of?
What?
But if not, I just want to thank you for making it to the end. If you enjoyed yourself, I would love it if you were to like this video, to subscribe if you have not already. Hit that bell thing so you know whenever I'm streaming on YouTube, or follow me on Twitch whenever I'm streaming on Twitch. Consider being a patron too, so you can keep this channel alive, and so that you too can ignore some of the experimental stuff that I post on there. But off I go for the weekend to rest, rejuvenate, and endlessly write scripts. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you next week. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.